Imagine a boy and a girl are born today. Both grew up in the same family, inherit the same culture, speak the same language, love the same grandparents, celebrate the same festivals, yet only one of them is told, dress properly, remember where you come from, keep the honor, know your honor. When you get married, keep the traditions. And the other one, he's never really told anything. Why is it that culture is often lived through women, or women are supposed to be known as the representatives of culture? In South Asia, women are usually expected to preserve rituals, food, religion, customs, communities, and many a times an entire society. And this isn't only unique to India. It happens in Korea, South Korea, it happens in Japan, it happens in Middle East, it happens in many other parts of South Asia as well. Histories, different continents, different religions, yet somehow the same expectation keeps on appearing. Now, is this just deep patriarchy? Well, that's one way to say it, but it goes a lot deeper. And we have a lot of things to dig in today. Let's begin. This answers one uncomfortable truth of how societies survive. Cultures don't exist by itself. Think about it. Languages don't get passed on by itself. Someone teaches them. Recipes don't get passed on by itself. Someone cooks it or teaches you how to cook it. Religion doesn't get passed on by itself. Someone teaches you what the traditions and the customs are. Festivals don't get passed on by itself. Someone organizes them. Every generation inherits culture from another generation. Sociologist Pierre Bourdieu called this social reproduction. Societies reproduce themselves, not just biologically, but also culturally. They pass values, customs, habits, the way one dresses, the way one speaks, the way one is supposed to be. Culture has to be taught. It doesn't survive accidentally, which brings us to another question, that if culture is to be taught, who transmits it? And if someone who has to transmit it, why does that have to be a woman? Usually a woman. This wasn't just an accident. To understand why is it the way it is, we need to go way back in time. Imagine you're living 5,000 years ago. There are no passports, no governments, no schools, no internet. How does your community survive? How do your children know which language to speak and how to speak them? How do you know which gods to worship? How do you know whom you should marry? How do you know which festivals you should celebrate? All this information needs to be passed on from one generation to another. Someone has to teach them. Culture doesn't survive because it's just written in books. For most of human history, culture survived because it was lived, it was sung, it was worn, it was spoken, it was performed, it was celebrated. And that was repeated generation after generation. Anthropologists call culture as something that needs to be transmitted, like a flame. So if it isn't passed from one generation to another, the flame can die down. And usually, how do you maintain the flame? Well, by passing it on through someone. And usually, it is the woman. But childcare isn't the only reason. Anthropologists argue that it's inheritance. Many things were built around inheritance. Whose wealth it is, whose land it is, who owns this, and who belongs to the family who owns this. Unlike motherhood, which is visible, fatherhood was historically something societies tried to regulate through marriage, sexual norms, and family structures. This led to strict expectations around women's sexuality, not because of morality, but because property mattered, inheritance mattered, and the lineage needed to be continued. And hence, women were given this role of giving birth to the next generation. Gradually, women came to symbolize not only the future of the family, but the future of the community as a whole. And when that happens, the behavior stops being personal. It becomes symbolic. One woman's choices begin to represent a family's honor, a community's honor, and then a nation's honor. Let's get to that. Political sociologist Neera Yuval Davis asked a remarkable question that really questioned the sociologist's way of looking at nations itself. She argued that many women are expected to play three roles. The first, biological, that is, to give birth, literally, to give birth to the future citizens of the country. Second, culturally, they pass on the values, habits, customs, traditions, languages. And third, they become symbols of the nation itself. Think about it. Many nations, many countries are symbolically known or, let's say, addressed as Mother India, Mother Ireland. Always the idea of motherland, never the idea of fatherland. They become metaphors of the nation, their bodies, their choices, their autonomy, their behavior, the clothes they wear. Everything starts becoming represented as the nation. All of this starts beginning to represent something much larger than themselves. And usually the debates around women are really less about women, but it is more about tradition, values, where is the society going, what does the society represent. And this isn't just in India, it happens across many other countries as well. The Indian daughter, in many Indian families, the Indian daughter is not raised to become an adult, she's raised to become a representative of the family, of the community, of the culture. And hence it comes, and the questions come like, look what you are wearing, represent your culture better. When you get married, when you go to your husband's house, make sure that you are being respectful towards your traditions and your culture and where you come from. Adjust, compromise. You see, it's not always about the behavior. It slowly starts becoming also about the representation. And let's say if a boy is behaving not in an apt manner, he would never be questioned. He would be perhaps looked at as he's just an individual. But if a daughter creates a mistake or makes a mistake or does something which is considered to be a mistake, it is looked at as, oh, look what kind of a family she comes from. It automatically becomes a collective blame. So her actions become collective and not individual at all. Obviously, this doesn't happen in every family in India or just in India, but it happens across the world in many cultures that women can still look at it and feel that they've gone through it or they experience it. But at the same time, when we speak about traditional Indian culture, we really need to understand what happened during colonization, because that changes everything. Whenever we speak about ancient India, it feels like we are speaking about something that is timeless, that is unchanging. But culture is never really frozen. It evolves. One generation passes it on to the other, maybe a bit fast, maybe a bit slowly, but usually it evolves. And hence, it's very important to understand what happened during the British colonial rule in India and the marking of the Indian society, how it was shaped during the British colonial rule in India. Colonialism didn't just occupy land, it occupied identity. Of course, colonialism has been about trade, resources, extracting the resources, looting the resources, taxation, stealing of land, all of that. But it also did something that is very invisible, but yet so visible that it leaves a dent in the society till today. It changed the way colonized people see themselves. When the British arrived in India, they didn't just govern, they judged. They looked at Indian society as primal, as backward, as something that needs a bit of fixing. And the central character to this narrative became the women. Whether it be through the boldness, which was through the Devdasi dancers in the temples who would dance freely with their midriff being shown in their beautiful saris and blouses in the temples of the gods, well, they were banned from those temples because the British looked at that as obscenity, while the Victorian women were wearing tight corsets which were hard to breathe from. So they looked at these moving midriff, moving beautiful, almost nymphs. They believed, like, what are they doing, exposing their bodies so visually? And that's blasphemy almost. And that's when the Devdasis were given the title of prostitutes. British officials pointed out many a times to sati, child marriage, the lack of education given to women, and hence they used all of these practices to define India as uncivilized. And to a very greater extent, yes, these practices deserved criticism. But Indian reformers themselves, like Rajaram Mohan Roy or Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, already were challenging, not that these reforms were coming from the other side only. Something interesting happened. Indians were not only fighting the British colonial rule, but they started defending the ideal Indian culture. And usually that representation of this ideal Indian culture and tradition was embodied by the women. The new woman. Historian Partha Chatterjee argued perhaps one of the most brilliant arguments in post-colonial studies. He spoke about two worlds. He spoke about these two worlds, the outer world, where Indians started looking at the industry, the science, the economy, the powers, the politics as something that India had to compete with the West. But the inner world was something that they could protect, which was the family, the traditions, the morals, the values, the habits, the behavior. And who represented this inner world? Usually, mostly, the women. Because they believed that the inner world had to be so fiercely, authentically Indian to oppose and have something that is theirs against the British. While men entered in English schools, wore Western suits, engaged in modern politics, women were expected to preserve what was the identity of true India. So their clothing became symbolic, their language became symbolic, their behavior became symbolic, modesty became symbolic. It became civilizational. It was not just their role in a family. She was carrying the identity of an entire nation that was trying to not get disappeared. The burden of representation. This represents what many women feel today, which is a simple choice of their partner. वो लोग क्या कहेंगे? What will the people say? This whole burden of what will the society say? What will they think of this partner that you have chosen? Or the clothes that she's wearing. This isn't our culture. If she decides to move abroad, don't forget your roots. Which is true. Don't forget your roots. But also evolve with the roots with you. So all of this is never said that your brother represents your culture. It's usually the woman who represents the culture, the sister, the mother, the wife, who represents the culture. This burden falls disproportionately on the women, and for centuries, even after centuries in today's time, it still continues to be felt. Women stopped being individuals, they became symbols of the family, the community, the nation, the country, and so on and so forth. Symbols are, of course, because symbols are controlled more carefully than ordinary people. And this isn't just about India, it's perhaps how societies respond when they fear losing themselves. India is changing, and so are so many other societies. We come back to the same question. If societies are changing, so culture is also changing. If culture is changing, it's evolving. And hence, if it's evolving, who gets to bear the responsibility to carry it? Now, culture doesn't survive because the government passes it on to us. It's usually the first person who passes it on to us. And many a times, who teaches you to be a good girl? It's usually your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, teacher. Forms another uncomfortable question. If women carry culture, does that mean that women also carry patriarchy within them? The answer is sometimes. Not because women are controlling, or as the old saying goes, औरत ही औरत की दुश्मन होती है. That phrase is highly misleading. Woman herself is the enemy of the woman is highly misleading. It is just a way by the patriarchy to pit the woman against the other. It's a highly misleading phrase, and it individualizes a systemic problem. Society doesn't just reproduce at birth. They reproduce through habit, through representation, through expectations, through conversations, through invisible lessons that go unseen. Women aren't creating these expectations. They have inherited them, and without knowing, they also pass it on to the next generation. Not because they hate women, but because they think that they are protecting them. The good girl. Think about how the good girl is raised in a family. Not in all families, but in many families, to be able to recognize this pattern. Don't speak loudly. Don't raise your voice. Don't sit this way. Don't wear these clothes. Don't make the family look bad. Learn to cook. Learn to cook. Good girls adjust. Learn to compromise. Compromise is a part of life. You'll have another home someday. This is something which is so annoying because in almost all Indian families, it's always said that after marriage, you will have another home. You will be in your home, your husband's home. So all these years that you were living in that home wasn't your home, it was your home. And why is it accepted and believed that you're going to move to your husband's home? Well, your husband could move into your home, or you could perhaps buy a home together, or there could be so many different instances, but doesn't mean that the house of your husband is your home and your own home is not your home. So whose home is which home? I mean, very few lessons are about being successful or ambitious. It's about being acceptable. It's about being agreeable. It's about self-sacrificing. It's about compromising. It's about being patient. She often learns that love comes from obedience, and slowly she starts policing herself. Most effective forms of power are not enforced usually by the governments or the police. They are enforced by ourselves. The most powerful prison is the one usually in our mind. When a mother-in-law is telling her daughter-in-law, I went through this, so should you, it's not that she's reinforcing patriarchy. It's actually she is inherited something and she's passing it on to her. It's not because she wants her to suffer. That's what she believes it to be the right way of being in a society, and hence she does the same thing to her daughter-in-law. Now the daughter-in-law is perhaps of this new generation and she has looked at life and lived life in a very different manner. So she looks at this kind of restriction and this kind of behavior as a red flag. And when it becomes into a red flag, then it becomes into a clash. And hence we keep coming back to the phrase, औरत ही औरत की दुश्मन है, which is misleading and completely wrong. She's reproducing what she inherited. A woman is judging another woman's clothes or her choices in her career or who she gets married to, protecting the social rules that were taught to them that they think that would keep their families safe. This isn't about women being cruel, because they are defending systems that perhaps once gave their own lives meaning. That's why change can feel threatening, because when one rejects a tradition, they feel like they're rejecting the person who passed the tradition to them. The differences begin way before adulthood. The boys are told to go out and play cricket. They're given a bat. The girl is given a toy of a kitchen, or she's told or she's taught how to cook. And these are not because the parents love the daughter less. No, they definitely love the daughter equally. But it's because they are abiding to the roles that were set by the society long before the kids were even born. Now, arranged marriage, as per se, historically and socially, it worked because it protected inheritance. It protected a family's values or their connections or someone they knew. And in many ways, caste roles as well, which is another topic altogether. But the question of arranged marriage is not just the compromise, it's also the consent and the choice. Say yes when you like someone and to say no when you don't like someone. Not to be coerced into it because that's what it is right now. That's what you are meant to do. That's a good family for you. That's a good boy for you. We have decided he comes from a good family. He has a good business. So many rooms, so many cars, so many X trips he would do, and you would be happy over there. No. And it goes vice versa for the men and also for the women to be able to make that choice to say yes if you like and say no if you don't like. It's as simple as that. But it isn't as simple as that, and we all know that. One of the ways society reveals itself is what they value. It's a very interesting thing that I've noticed in Spain, and it's a very common thing, and it was really surprising to me, and I was so happy to see that, because in Spain, a child inherits the names of both the parents. So if you have a child in Spain, the child would take the name of the father and the mother, the surnames of the father and the mother. Hence, in every document, it's mandatory that you have the first name and the second name. And that is something beautiful and inclusive and shows how much representation and value are given to both the sides. Because in India, when a woman gets married, a woman's name is completely changed. Her first name that she was born with, that she's lived her entire life, adult life, it's just changed. So you are called this for these many years of your life. After 30 years, your name is completely changed. Your identity of what you were before, erased after marriage. And many a times, people like to take the surnames of the husbands. That's a personal choice, but it's really refreshing to see how we can give this choice to the women as well to perhaps preserve their original names with themselves forever. But a simple choice of letting a woman exist with her name and having the child have the surnames of both the parents and not just the fathers. Another thing that I've seen in Spain of the diaspora, perhaps not only in Spain, but in America, the Indian diaspora outside of India, I guess when they migrate, they try to preserve the culture so tightly, so hard, and that's beautiful. But at the same time, it's again at the cost of a woman. Again, policing at the cost of her decisions outside of India, her decisions of what she wears, who she dates, who she goes out with, till what time she's going to be out. All of these decisions are still policed. So now let's go back to the little girl we met at the beginning of the video. One who was told, don't forget your culture. Of course, don't forget your culture. Culture is something that we need to be proud of, preserve it, and restore it and carry it forward. But at the same time, don't just tell her, because she's not just the only person who's supposed to carry the culture. Also tell her brother to carry the culture forward. Because whose responsibility should it actually be to carry the culture forward? It should belong to all of us, not just one gender. Maybe the strongest traditions are not the ones that are protected by fear or obligation, but by the way we choose to protect themselves, ones that people choose to carry forward. If boys were reminded to preserve language, culture becomes shared. Separate values from control. Ask, are we preserving kindness or policing clothing? Not everything called tradition can serve the same purpose. Let cultures evolve. Every tradition that we know today was ancient, but also it was ancient because it was an innovation. It was something that was created. Give the freedom for the culture to evolve and for you to also evolve with the culture, but never forgetting where you come from and never forgetting your roots. Replace honor with responsibility. Families always place honor on the daughters. Instead, ask, how can every member of the family contribute to the family's values? Instead of just telling the daughters, don't forget your roots, maybe ask the boys to also preserve the culture, to learn how to cook, to learn the recipes, to follow the rituals, follow the traditions. It's their responsibility too. Languages deserve to survive, stories deserve to survive, food deserves to survive, festivals deserve to survive, many beautiful traditions deserve to survive. But they should survive because people love them, not just because one gender is expected to maintain them. The strongest cultures are not where they leave the entire burden, the weight of the culture to be carried by the women, but where it's shared by everyone. Because culture isn't inherited through sacrifice alone. It survives through participation. And maybe that's the future that the tradition deserves.